Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. Over a series of conversations that we're doing every Tuesday on LOT Insights, we bring you some of India's best known wealth and finance managers talking to you about what you should do when it comes to managing your money right. Tonight, I'm in conversation with Harsh Roongta. Harsh, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. It's always great to get advice directly from experts like yourself for our entrepreneurs watching, given also the fact that you're an entrepreneur yourself and you've had such a vast and varied experience. So good having you here on the show with us today. Maybe we could kick off today's conversation asking you to talk about briefly your journey and how you would like to really introduce yourself to our viewers.
Like all typical middle class people, I finished a professional degree. In my case, that was a chartered accountancy. Seems like a lifetime ago now. Did 2 years of hardcore tax consulting in the
Okay.
then largest tax firm in India. Worked with ICICI, and then the entrepreneurial bug bigged me. So I became an entrepreneur, stayed an entrepreneur for 8 years, then came back to ICICI to start off the retail lending business from scratch in ICICI. But as they say,
Sure.
once an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. So 2000, I quit again to start my own venture. We raised, as was the thing then, we raised external funding, and I ran
Okay.
that com and apnapaisa.com for about 15 years before I exited. And I'm an investment advisor. I run my own investment advisory firm.
Through this interview, Harsh, if you had one piece of advice for an entrepreneur watching to say, this is what I want to tell you about what you should be doing when it comes to your money, saving it, investing it right, in one sentence, what do you want to tell them?
I'll make it two sentences. The first is that I
Okay.
think entrepreneurship is an experience that you should never ever miss. Even a failure will teach you many things. And that by itself is the greatest investment that you can make in your own personal development. One.
Okay.
I think second, as far as investments are concerned, clearly at the beginning, a safety net and a stop loss corridor. I think those are two big things that you need to look at. Once you become successful and you have funds, I think you need to segregate your investment funds from your business funds. I think those
Okay.
are the two big mantras that I would.
That's something that most of the experts who come on our show tell us. Keep your personal and your professional funds separate. Is that a mistake you see a lot of entrepreneurs making, Harsh? And then perhaps if such a common mistake, your advice for an entrepreneur as to how they can ensure that the two are then remaining separate.
So I think what happens, especially, so this is really a problem when entrepreneurs have become successful. At that
Okay.
stage, I made some money, and especially if your business is one that requires lots of funding, then there is always, and obviously it is successful, and therefore
Hmm.
the business is earning a certain rate of return. The point, therefore, entrepreneurs think, and probably rightly so, is that
Sure.
why should I take funds out of the business and borrow money when the business is giving me such great returns? I mean, that's the standard refrain that is used. Uh, the point with that, or the error in that thinking, I think, is that you are effectively putting all your eggs in a single basket. And
Yeah.
that's never an investment philosophy. I think at some point of time, you look at any of the great entrepreneurs. I mean, at some point, maybe
Sure.
take a little off. Don't take everything off, but take at least that little bit of that, should this business stop for any reason. I
Sure.
mean, we live in certain times, regulatory changes happen, business cycles happen, pandemics happen. I mean,
Yeah.
extremely uncertain times. Having a separate, completely segregated investment portfolio, therefore, assures you a certain protection. And I think that ensures that you and your family are able to maintain a reasonable lifestyle, even if for any
Okay.
reason the business is impacted.
Okay. You were using the word safety net in your previous answer, talking about your advice for an entrepreneur. When you're saying safety net, what do you mean? Do you mean having a certain percentage of your take home every month set aside when you're starting out? How should they really go about that? I'm curious.
So I think this derives from my own experience, and now some of my clients are entrepreneurs as well. I think
Okay.
it's a very scary step when you first sort of step out of the corporate world to become an entrepreneur. It's extremely scary. Okay, I mean, so many things go through your mind. So many things went through my mind, and the way I made up that time, and I think it works, is that okay, I'm going to give this 12 months, 18 months, 24
Okay.
months, what is that works for you. I'm going to give this 12 months. During this 12 months, this is the money that I will spend. I'll assume the business does not make any money. This is the 12 months, this is the bare minimum I need to survive. So, and this is I'm going to put aside. So that's one safety net that you put in place. The second safety net that you put in place are your insurances. So what could go wrong? I mean, my health insurance, the first thing I did before I became an entrepreneur was to buy an health insurance. At that time, that was a fairly large amount. And, life insurance, if something happens to you, in the day when I became an entrepreneur, term life was not available, or it had just become
Yeah.
available. So I life insurance, I took health insurance, I set aside this 12-month money for this thing. The biggest thing was my stop loss corridor. So I think deciding
Okay.
that 12 months or 18 months or 24 months that you are going to give to this entrepreneurship, I think is very important. It's like a stop loss in an investment that you do. You must know when to give up.
Okay, so which brings me to my next question, Harsh. Would you recommend for someone who's perhaps starting out and saying, great, I should look at having a stop loss. I should perhaps look at, investing X percentage of what I have. I should look at segregating my finances. Do they necessarily need to work with an expert like yourself? Or, what sort of maybe resources, online reading, etc., do you recommend or suggest for someone so that they become more and more aware of what their own saving and investment strategy should be like?
So I think the entrepreneurship journey becomes easier, okay, when you have a
Okay.
mentor, okay, and
Okay.
if the mentor himself or herself has gone through an entrepreneurship journey, I think there is this ability to relate or be, have empathy with what an entrepreneur is going. Being an entrepreneur is a very lonely journey. I
Yeah.
think having the support of yourself during that journey, having the support of your family, and having a mentor, who can sort of pave the way for you in terms of managing your expectation. Obviously, the mentor is not an expert in your business. Unlikely you will find a mentor, uh, who's an expert in your business. But because
Yeah.
all entrepreneurship goes through something similar. So I think having
Sure.
a mentor helps. And obviously, today the online resources being what they are, it is a good thing. The only problem with online resources are, I think, the trick there is to be able to zero in on the correct resources that gel with you. I think that
Yeah.
could be a issue with online resources.
I'm going to take a quick break on that note, Harsh, but we're back in just a moment. us here on LOT Insights. Tonight, I'm in conversation with Harsh Roongta. Let's talk then about perhaps what entrepreneurs should keep in mind about the different, when they're at the different stages of their life. For the student who's watching this interview to say, I would love to turn an entrepreneur, what should I keep in mind when it comes to how I should plan my finances? For an entrepreneur who's just starting out saying, how should I be planning my saving, investment, etc.? And for an entrepreneur who's perhaps spent a couple of years running their business and saying, should I look at maybe changing strategies when it comes to my business? What do you want to tell them?
So let's pick the most, the ones who are going to make India, the students who are the future entrepreneurs of
Hmm.
India. What I want
Yeah,
to tell them very clearly is that entrepreneurship is extremely enriching. Please try it at least once in your life. It is better, in completely another context, the saying goes that it is better to have loved and failed than never to have loved at all. That failures teach you. Success sometimes masks. So I think there is nothing wrong in being an entrepreneur and failing, not succeeding. Okay, failure teaches you so many lessons. It will make you a much better corporate person if you choose to go back to a corporate
okay,
or you become an entrepreneur. What should
okay,
you keep in mind? If we come back to the money angle, I think it helps.
sure,
So if your family, or if your family is not dependent on what you earn and your business is not such that it requires too much funding, then
mm,
you know you have a much easier way for you to turn an entrepreneur. You don't have to really have too much of a stake, too much of money, because you have the safety. Your family is your safety net. They are already bearing your expense. If they are in a position to bear your expense for some more time, then the safety net
sure,
exists. I think those who are contemplating entrepreneurship or have just become entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, I think if you have already not thought about it, think of the safety net, look at your
okay,
insurance. Okay, very, very important to look at the insurances. Look, talk. I mean, one of the other things is that your safety net could also be a second income that's coming in from a spouse. Okay, that is
sure,
a huge safety net. Okay, so I mean, look at everything. I recommend that you sort of sit down and see how far your safety net stretches. What are the
okay,
various events that would, happen to you? Okay. Insurance is particularly important, because many people who are in the corporate world, and because the corporate covers them, they don't really worry about insurances. And this is the first time they will be thinking about it. So again, it helps if you talk to advisor who will be able to tell you all this. Now, if you are a successful entrepreneur, I think now comes the time where you need to sort of segregate your investments from your business. And I think
mm,
it can not be abrupt. You don't need to one fine day pluck out so much money and put it aside, but it
sure,
should be systematic, disciplined, and with a plan. Always with a plan, depending on
mm-hmm,
what you need money for. So, I mean, make sure that your business runs properly. Obviously, I mean, the thing that is generating the wealth should not get disturbed, but at the same
sure.
time, your succession objectives should be achieved.
Okay, so that is for what your advice for entrepreneurs in terms of what they should be looking at the different stages of their life. Could we also talk about asset class allocation? If we want to break it up, if you want to break your answer up, either for a not maybe a student, but someone who's just started out, a seasoned entrepreneur, someone who perhaps says, I want to maybe sell off my business, retire, etc., in the next 4, 5, 10 years. How should they really be approaching it for a woman entrepreneur? Perhaps your advice to say this is what your asset allocation should typically look like, or if you want to break it up age-wise and say that in your 30s you should look at this, in your 40s, in your 50s, this is how you should be approaching your investments. What advice do you have?
So I think your asset allocation, what you invest in, is primarily a matrix of two things: your own risk
Okay.
profile. Okay? Your risk profile, let's say it's a scale of 1 to 3, low risk profile, moderate, high risk profile, right?
Sure.
What and when do you need the money? I think so. One is a column, another is a row. So you have 9 boxes in which the asset
Sure.
allocation would be different. Okay. This is true of every investor, not just entrepreneurs. So, what am I
Okay.
recommending for the entrepreneurs? One, because the base business that you are doing is relatively, slightly risky. Uh, you could damp down your risk profile. I think by natural selection, entrepreneurs will typically have aggressive risk profiles. And that's the reason they became entrepreneurs in the first place. Most likely, most likely. So
Sure.
maybe I've seen most entrepreneurs in their investments tend to be moderate, which is a good thing according to me. If they are not, they should damp it down to one at least, from aggressive to moderate, and do it as if their risk profile is moderate. Post that, of course, it's the normal. If there is money that you need for your child's education in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, okay, then obviously it will go in a much more conservative asset class, much more debt, much less equity. You could have
Sure.
foreign equity, you could have more equity, you should
Sure.
have gold, 5 or 10%. Uh, I think it would be tough to have a fixed formula as to how
Okay.
much gold, how much international equity, how much debt. But I think the thing about this is you could choose vehicles like a mutual fund, like a portfolio management, like AIFs. I mean, the PMS AIFs come into play if the amounts are larger. Otherwise, mutual funds are
Okay.
an excellent way to get exposures to almost all the asset classes that you want to
Sure.
get exposure to.
Okay, so we've run out of time on today's interview, Harsh. So this is a series of conversations that we are looking forward to doing with you. Talking about investments, talking about saving rate, etc. So let me take some lessons from your personal life then, as we're winding down today's conversation. You said you had set yourself the stopgap, not perhaps something that you strictly followed, but if you could leave our entrepreneurs perhaps with some of the biggest mistakes you think that you've made when it comes to saving in investments, how you would redo it if you had the chance to redo your investments, if at all. What would you want to tell them?
I think the biggest mistake that I made was not starting early. Okay. And
Okay.
and if I was to relook, so there's nothing in my career that I would ever redo again. I think I've enjoyed every stint I have done. But in my investment journey, I would start much earlier than I did. And I think so. Plan. I never planned. Today I am a planner, but I never planned for it when I started. So I would say plan
Okay.
and start early. That I think would be the number one mistake that, based on my personal experience, I would tell entrepreneurs to guard against.
All right, Harsh Roongta, thank you so much for your time here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. If you have any feedback for us, our details is coming up on your screens. If there's anyone specific that you'd like for us to interview here on LOT Insights every Tuesday, do let us know. If there's anything specific you would like for these experts who come on our show to answer, do send us your questions. You can tweet at us, you can send us an email. All of those details coming up on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.